Tonight I am going to say out loud the thing nobody warned you about, and some of you are going to feel caught because you have been living inside it and you did not have a name for it. Everybody talks about the very end. Everybody talks about the last years, the going, the letting go, but nobody sits an old man down and tells him about the hardest stretch of all, which is not the end at all. It is the bridge. It is the 10 years between 65 and 75, the in-between years, when the body first turns on you and the world still expects you to be strong. Stay with me, because this is the part they leave out. In the last years, people finally soften toward you. They slow down for you. They gather around you. They forgive you your weakness because they can see it plainly. But in the bridge years, you are caught in the worst place a person can stand. You are too old to be who you were and too young to be tended. The strength is leaving your hands, and nobody has given you permission to set the weight down yet. So you carry it, and you carry it alone, and you tell no one, and that carrying is the hardest work of a whole life. The old ones had a picture for it, and it is the truest thing I know about these years. They said, "Watch the river where it nears the sea. It does not fall. It does not end. It slows. It goes wide and quiet and slow, and a young person standing on the bank thinks the river is dying because it has lost its rushing and its noise. But the old ones knew. The river is not dying. It is becoming wide enough to meet the sea. The slowing is not the end of the river. It is the river getting ready to be something larger than it ever was in the mountains. But between the rushing and the sea, there is that long, slow stretch, and it is the loneliest water on the whole river. And that stretch is where you are. So tonight I will give you the 6 teachings the old ones gave for carrying the weight of the between time, and I will tell you about the men and women I watched cross it, some who drowned in it and some who learned to float. But first, one quiet thing, because it belongs right here, at the start, while your heart is open. Everything I am telling you tonight, and much more that one fire cannot hold, I set down in a small book, so it would not be lost with me when my own river reaches the sea. I called it the native way. It is written the way I am speaking to you now, plainly, by this fire, and there is a whole part of it, just for these bridge years, the years nobody writes about. It is in the first comment below, if your heart wants to sit with it longer than one evening. But do not go yet. Stay right here at the fire, because I have not yet told you about Walter, and Walter is the reason I believe every word I am about to say. The first teaching: the slowing is not the failing. Do not fight the wide water. My grandfather knew a man named Walter, and Walter was the strongest man in the valley, the kind of man who was his strength, who did not know who he was without it. And when Walter reached the bridge years 66, 67, and his back began to argue with him in the mornings, and his hands could not do in an hour what they once did in 10 minutes, Walter went to war with it. He would not slow. He took the slowing as an insult, as a thing to be beaten, and he drove his body harder to prove the river was still in the mountains. And I watched that man break himself, not because he was weak, but because he could not forgive the water for going wide. He spent the whole bridge decade fighting the current instead of riding it, and he arrived at his last years exhausted, angry, a man who had wrestled a river for 10 years and lost, because no one wins that fight. It is not a fight you are meant to win. My grandfather said, the tragedy of Walter was not that he slowed. Every man slows. The tragedy was that he thought the slowing was the enemy, when the slowing was the road. He said, when the river goes wide, you do not paddle harder, little one. You lift the paddle out of the water. You let the wideness carry you, because the wideness knows where it is going, and it is going somewhere larger than the noise you are grieving. Before I give you the second teaching, let me say one quiet thing, because it belongs right here, at the start, while your heart is open. Everything I am telling you tonight, and much more that one fire cannot hold, I set down in a small book, so it would not be lost with me when my own river reaches the sea. I called it The Native Way. It is written the way I am speaking to you now, plainly, by this fire. And there is a whole part of it, just for these bridge years, the years nobody writes about. It is in the first comment below, if your heart wants to sit with it longer than one evening. But do not go yet. Stay right here at the fire, because the next teaching is the one you came for without knowing it, and I have not yet told you about Eli. The second teaching. The body betrays first, and you must let the strong face fall. Here is the cruelty of the bridge years that no one names. The body goes before the world lets you go. Inside, you are entirely yourself. The man you have always been is sitting right there behind your eyes, unchanged, wanting to lift the thing, wanting to walk the far field, wanting to be counted on. But the hands have started to lie to you. The knees have started to lie. And the world, your children, the young people, they still see the strong one, and they still lean on him because he taught them to. So you hold the strong face on, and behind it you are frightened and tired, and you tell no one, because who is there to tell? The one they lean on cannot lean. My grandmother had a saying for this, and she gave it to me the year my own hands began to lie. She said, "The oak that will not bend in the wind is the one the wind breaks." She said, "You have worn the strong face for 50 years, and it served the people well. But there is a season when the strong face becomes a stone you are carrying uphill, and the strongest thing an old man ever does is set it down and let someone see him tremble." She said, "They will not love you less. They will finally love the whole of you, and not just the wall." I watched a man named Eli learn this the hard way, and I will tell you about him, because he is the heart of the whole night. Eli was 68, and his heart had begun to trouble him, and he told no one, not his wife, not his sons, because he was the one the family stood on. He carried that fear alone for 2 winters, the way a man carries a stone in his coat, and it made him hard and short and distant, and his family thought he had grown cold, when the truth was he was terrified and alone inside the strong face. And one night his wife, who was wiser than he knew, sat down beside him and said, "Eli, I have been married to you for 40 years, and I did not marry a wall. Let me in." And the old ones say that when Eli finally wept in front of his wife, at 68, for the first time in their whole marriage, it was not the end of his strength. It was the beginning of the only years they ever truly spent as 2 people instead of one leaning on one. He lived 9 more years, and his sons told me at his burial that the father they got in those last 9 years, the one who let them see him afraid, was more of a father than the wall had ever been. The third teaching. You will become invisible, and you must not disappear along with it. There is a strange grief in the bridge years that the young cannot imagine. You become invisible. The world begins to look past you. In a room, the talk flows to the young and the middle, and you sit at the edge of it, still full, still burning inside with everything you know, and no one turns to you. In the store, the young clerk speaks slowly to you, as if the years had taken your mind along with your quickness. And here is the danger, here is the drowning. When the world stops seeing you, you can begin to agree with it. You can start to make yourself small to match the small space they have given you. You can disappear on the inside to match the invisible on the outside. My grandmother said, when the world stops looking at you, that is not permission to stop being. She said, the mountain does not shrink because the travelers have stopped pointing at it. It is a mountain whether they look or not. She taught me that the invisible years are a test of whether you were living for their eyes all along or for something truer, and the old ones knew the answer. They kept their fires lit whether anyone came or not. They kept knowing what they knew. They stayed the mountain, and the ones who needed the mountain always, eventually, found their way back to it. Do not disappear to match their blindness. Stay lit. The fourth teaching. Carry the weight, but do not carry it without a witness. The bridge years ask you to carry a strange and heavy load. The friends begin to go. The strength goes. The role you played for 40 years is quietly taken from your hands. And all of this you are expected to bear, standing up, still smiling, still driving to the appointments, still fixing the young one's troubles, because you are not old enough yet for anyone to carry you. This is the true weight of the between time, and it is real. And if any young person tells you it is not, they have simply not reached the bridge. But my grandfather said a thing I have never let go of. He said, "The weight is not the thing that breaks a man. The weight carried in secret is the thing that breaks him." He said, "Find one witness, not the whole village. One. One person who knows the real state of you, the fear you have not named, the knee that is worse than you let on, the grief you smile over at supper." He said, "A burden shared with even one true witness weighs half of what it weighed, and I have measured this on my own back and found it true. Eli's witness was his wife. Mine has been the fire, and the ones who sit at it. Find your one. Do not cross the wide water with no one on the bank who knows your name." The fifth teaching. Make your peace slowly, because this crossing is not a single step. The young think of making peace as a single act, a dramatic day, a great forgiving. The old ones knew better. In the bridge years, peace is a slow crossing, made one stone at a time, over the whole 10 years. You do not wake one morning at peace with the body that betrayed you. You make that peace a little each dawn, and lose it a little each bad night, and make it again. You do not forgive the years for taking your friends all at once. You forgive them slowly, at each burial, a stone at a time. The between time is long precisely so that you can cross it slowly. Do not despise its length. The length is the mercy. A shorter bridge would not give you time to lay down all you must lay down. My grandmother said, "You did not gather your whole life in a day, so do not expect to set it down in a day." She said, "Cross the wide water the way you cross any deep river, with your eyes on the next stone, never on the whole river, because the whole river will frighten a person to stillness, and the next stone never will. One stone. Make peace with one thing this season. The next season, the next stone." That is how the old ones crossed the between time, and it is how you will cross it too, and you will look up one day past 75 and find you are most of the way across, and you did it without ever once seeing the whole river. The sixth teaching. You are the bridge others will walk across, and that is why you were kept. Here is the last thing, and it is the one that turns the whole hard decade over and shows you its other face. Why are these the bridge years? Because you yourself have become a bridge. The line of your people stretches back behind you, 10,000 years of grandmothers and grandfathers, and it stretches forward into children not yet born, and in these very years, these hard, slow, invisible years, you are the plank they all cross on. Everything the old ones knew has to pass through you to reach the young, or it dies with your generation. That is not a small thing. That is the largest thing. The between time feels like being set aside, but you have not been set aside. You have been set in place, laid down across the water, so the young can cross to where you already stand. I knew a man named Samuel, quiet, unremarkable, a man the world had stopped seeing years before. And in his bridge years, nearly invisible, he taught 3 grandchildren how to read the weather, how to sit still in the woods, how to mend a thing instead of throwing it away, how to keep a promise. And Samuel died at 74, in the middle of the bridge, and the world barely noticed. But I sat with one of those grandchildren 40 years later, an old man himself now, and he was still teaching Samuel's ways to children who never heard the name Samuel and never will. That is the line. Samuel was the plank they crossed on, and the crossing outlived him by 100 years, and it is not finished yet. My grandmother said, "No one is invisible who is holding up the ones behind them. They just cannot see the weight from where they are standing." So let me gather the six, the way my grandmother gathered her herbs, tied and hung, where your hand can reach them. The slowing is not the failing, so do not fight the wide water. Be like the river that goes wide to meet the sea. Let the strong face fall, and let one person see you tremble, because the oak that will not bend is the one the wind breaks. When the world stops seeing you, stay the mountain anyway, and do not disappear to match their blindness. Carry the weight, but never in secret. Find your one witness on the bank. Make your peace slowly, one stone at a time, and let the length of the bridge be the mercy it was meant to be. And remember, in the years you feel most set aside, that you are the plank the whole line crosses on, and no one is invisible who is holding up the ones behind them. I am an old man now, and I am past the bridge on the far bank of it, deep in my own last light. And I will tell you the truth by this fire, the way the old ones would want it told. The between time, those years from 65 to 75, were the hardest of my whole life, harder than the poverty, harder than the burying. They were hard because no one warned me, and no one softened toward me yet, and I carried the slowing and the invisible and the fear behind a strong face for too long, alone. But they were also the years that made me into the far bank. Everything I am able to give you now, I learned by crossing that wide, slow water without a map. So if you are in the middle of the bridge tonight, on the loneliest stretch of the river, hear me. You are not dying. You are widening. Lift the paddle. Let one person see you. Stay the mountain. Cross one stone at a time. The sea is not the end of the river. It is the river, finally as large as it was always going to be. Meet the wide water the way the river meets it, slow and unafraid, and going somewhere larger than the noise you left behind. If tonight stayed with you, all of it, the whole crossing, I have set it down in the native way, 20 teachings for the later years, in the first comment below. Read one teaching and sit with it overnight. That is the only way they were ever meant to be taken. And before you go, tell me in the comments, and I read every one of them slowly, the way an old man reads tracks by the river. Name the one person who is your witness on the bank, the one who knows the real state of you. And if you do not have one yet, say that too, because sometimes saying it is the first stone of the crossing. Subscribe, and come sit with me again at this fire. You are part of the people who remember.